We're back. Welcome back to the Fucking Ridiculous podcast, where we discuss only things that are truly fucking ridiculous and where we do not take ourselves seriously. Last week, you saw me at my best. At my best. I was just out of surgery. I was under the influence of some painkillers and some wine. So, who actually knows what was said? But I'm better today. I'm 3 weeks out, so only 9 more to go in this sucker. First things first. I would like to address the clip and circle back on the son who put in the job application. So he did get that job, and he actually was voted like camp counselor of the week, one of the weeks he was working. So I was pretty fucking pumped about that. I also got a clip from a girl who works there. Fun fact, she's the daughter of my therapist. And so everything in Richmond is connected. But she sends me a video and says, hey, just so you know, we've hired a bunch of high school kids, and most of them get in trouble for like playing on their phone or playing video games or texting too much. And your son sits quietly with his group and plays them music. And shot me a picture of them. And I was like, oh my God, I fucking did it. I raised a good human being. So you know what? Now he knows the state of Virginia's VA. Now he will know he needs to know his social security number. And he does in fact know that he is Caucasian, white, Aryan, whatever you want to call that. That is his box to check. So I think those are solid parenting, winning goals. In other news, my sign-up genius to wash my hair and make ponytails in my hair will be going live this weekend. So if you're interested, just DM me with your email address and I'll add you, because today I finally treated myself to the blow dry bar. I've never been to one of these where they wash your hair and then they like blow it dry and then they style it and stuff. Like you do that with when you get your hair done, but like that's the only time I've ever done it. And I'm not going to lie, I actually fucking loved it. So if my hair looks good today, it is because of that. If it looks bad today, it is because of that. So do with that what you will. But I can't do a goddamn thing. So anyway, one of the things I want to talk about is too much information. I definitely am guilty of it. Several years ago, my older son, the counselor of the week, he and I were driving down the road. Now, he was still little enough that like he had to sit in the back seat with the booster. He couldn't sit in the front seat with me. And so I'm looking at him through the rearview mirror and we're just chitty-chatting about whatever. So he's probably like second grade is what I'm thinking. Maybe first grade. I don't know. It's like a weight dependent thing, whatever. So on the booster seat. But anyway, so he's like, hey, Mom. And I'm like, yeah, buddy. And he's like, so, I mean, do I have to like do it? And I look up and I'm like looking at him through the rearview mirror and he's kind of like raising his eyebrows like, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Now I know what I'm talking about. And I was like, no, I mean, absolutely not. You do not have to do that if you don't want to. It's totally your choice. I did follow up with, I think you're going to want to. Pretty sure you will. And that's fine too. But no one's going to force you into it. So that's your choice. And he's like, okay. And then we keep driving down the road and he's like, well, I mean, how long does it take? And I'm like, well, shit. Because in my head, I am like thinking I'm not a boy, but I have read enough and understand enough to know that like the first times for everyone maybe aren't like the smoothest. And so I'm trying to cast the net really wide because I want someone to have like a good, solid sense of self and be confident. But at the same time, I don't want to like overpromise. And yeah, so I didn't know what to say. So I went with what my gut told me, which was, well, I don't know, buddy. I mean, it could be like 30 seconds. It could be an hour. And he was like, an hour? I have to do that for an hour? And I said, well, I mean, I don't know. Everyone's totally different. And you know, this is something that like you'll figure out like as you go through this journey of it. And so then we're silent for a little bit and I was like patting myself on the back thinking I'm rocking this. And so then he goes, well, how long does it take you and Dad? And I'm like, honestly, I am absolutely never looking at a clock, so I don't know. I don't know. And he's like, I'm in like 20 minutes, an hour. And I was like, sure, all of it, any of it. I don't know. And so then at that point, we're done. Okay, so we're not moving along in this conversation at all. After that, when I get home, I say to my husband, I describe this conversation. I go, isn't that so like silly and ridiculous? And he's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a talk last night. And I was like, oh, you did? What'd you talk about? And he goes, well, he asked me what F-U-C-K meant. I said, okay, well, what'd you say? And he said, well, I mean, I told him. And I said, you mean you told him like it's a curse word that we don't say? And he's like, no. I told him what it meant, like what the action is. And I was like, cool. Would have been good to know that because I got all the follow-up questions, including, and I told him what my son said to me, and then I told him my answers. And the one thing he was like irate about, he was like, what the fuck? 30 seconds? Dude, what does that say about me? I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm doing a solid by like trying to cast the net wide for all the boys out there that, or men that, and now you're like, it's all about you. I was like, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So I'm just doing what I thought was the right thing to do. He's like, you better not tell that story to anyone else because I don't want people thinking that about me. And I was like, whatever. So I have told everyone, of course. The moral of this story is don't answer more than what is asked. Okay? So, another TMI learning moment, and I'm just doing this as a PSA for people. Same son. Really curious like me. So, like, was always asking questions, like, would rather not even, like, answer a question because he's just like, why? Well, what's that about? You know, I ask him to do something and he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what is fucking unclear about take the garbage out? Like, do you need an invitation? Do you need a roadmap? I don't know. But anyway, so same son, several years later, we're sitting in the car again. And he had this like favorite shirt that someone had bought him at the beach or whatever. And so we'd been at the beach and his sister had been sitting on the shirt. And unfortunately for everyone, it was that time of the month for her. And now they're twins. So they're the same age, but very, very different on so many levels. And so he's pissed that she has like sat on his shirt and some liquid got on it. And I'm like, dude, she cannot help it, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. And he's like, well, I mean, she knew. Why did she sit on it? Why would she do that? It's like she did it on purpose. And I was like, she definitely didn't do it on purpose. No one is willing this stuff to happen. I swear to you. So then we traveled on the road a little bit more. And he's like, well, thank God that's over. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he said, well, I mean, you know, girls, you know, they bleed. I was like, yeah, I know, buddy. I'm one of them. Been doing it for a long time. And he's like, what? And I go, what are you talking about? Like, I'm so confused right now because he's talking about one thing, I'm talking about another thing, and I'm trying to explain this stuff. And I know he's gone through it in school, so that he gets like, you got girls bleed. I'm like, yeah, I know, fucker. And he says, well, I mean, why have you been bleeding for years? And I'm like, because when you get your period, that's what happens. And he goes, yeah, but you only get it one time. And I'm like, oh, no, my friend. You get it one time a month for the rest of your fucking life. So you better right now wrap up your complaints and stuff them down in the unwanted pile of garbage and just thank God that your sister hasn't done worse to you, because your future wife's going to thank you and all your girlfriends are going to thank me actually for that, because no, they get it every fucking month and you better like look out because the shit's real. So if they don't understand that it is monthly, not just one time, you need to clarify that for them, okay? That's super important. That was a time where TMI actually like worked in my favor. Don't even get me started on the whole like tampons and all that stuff, because it's a really weird discussion that never goes well. But I'm sure you're asking, like, why are you having these conversations? Well, that is a great question. And that's how tight we are. He feels like he can ask me whatever. So one other time we're driving down the road again, and we're talking about having sex again. And like, I don't know what happened. Something came up about, condoms. And I was like, well, yeah, those are super important. You always want to use those because you just don't want stuff going wrong. He's like, okay. So he's like, well, when did you have sex for the first time? And I was like, ooh, and I have a thing. I'm not going to lie to my kids. Like, I'm not necessarily going to answer a question at that moment in time, but if they want to know the honest answer, I will tell them. And there are only a few questions that my son has asked that I've been like, you know what, I really want to have this discussion, but I want to wait until you're like this age because I'm uncomfortable with you knowing this stuff about me at this particular age. And so, of course, I say what I said. And then he's like, what about dad? And I was like, I don't know. And I say another age. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, then I go home and I told my husband what I said. And my husband's like, dude, I had it way later than that. And I was like, okay, well, do you want to rectify this? Do you want to, like, I don't know what you want to do. I'm sorry. I was just guessing. And I was trying to make myself look good too. So, whatever. So I don't even know if they had that conversation or not. But the moral of the story is if you don't want to answer, then tell them that you do want to answer, but that you'll do that at a later date and they may not remember. If the follow-up question is why, then you will say, because I'm super uncomfortable with that. But I trust you and love you so much that I really do want to share these answers with you just so you're, very well prepared in this world. That's a solid answer, I think. And then you move on. So parenting's hard. I think we can all agree on that. And I also think that, like, none of us are crushing it. I mean, if you are, then I applaud you because I am not. But I'm trying. And there's that. So I really don't want my kids to, like, go into this world unprepared, which is why, answering these questions about, like, the Social Security number and being Caucasian are important because better ask me and I'll ridicule you than someone else, I'm going to save you some embarrassment. Answering these questions, though, is, like, super uncomfortable and you have to be, like, okay with it. Just to be like, I'm just going to put it out there and you know what? Do with it what you will. And fun fact, I actually don't even hate these questions because I have basically learned to just give zero fucks. And so I'm like, well, you want to answer? I'll give you an answer. Now, there are some that are uber uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. And you just got to either gut through it or, like, discuss it at a later date and, like, get your, your top 3 points you want to make out there and then move on and go have a glass of wine or go for a walk or go play golf or whatever it is that you do for fun. But we're all answering them. And if you need me to answer for you, just DM me. I'm happy to do a little TED talk. Because don't even get me started on what they're watching and the porn stuff. It's like, I don't know. I'm floored. I got a lot of thoughts and no words. I've had a lot of not so deep thoughts lately. But going along the lines of this particular episode and, like, the content and what we've been discussing, there are 3 words that, like, I, like, almost refuse to say because the mental picture that it denotes, that they describe are just awful. So the first one, and I know everyone's gonna be like, well, it's not a big deal, is panties. I just, for some reason, that is so, like, disgusting. Like, can we just call them underwear or, like, undies or, like, thongs or just commando or just, like, anything but panties? I don't know why. I just can't get down with it and never have been able to. Second one, and I know everyone's like, but moist is gross. I mean, unless you're talking about a baked good, and then it's a totally good, useful descriptor. If it's not about a baked good, it's not. It reminds me of, like, a sponge. I don't know. It's gross. I have a hard time saying it, so we should just strike that. The last one is, I can't even say it without laughing, is because some people actually use this as a term of endearment. And I'm like, no. Squirt. It's so gross. It's so gross. I mean, like, I get you have like a squirt gun, but like that's a water gun, right? Or like a Nerf gun even, you're welcome, Nerf. But like, have you ever heard someone go like, hey, squirt? And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to like throw up in my mouth. It's disgusting. So I think we need to strike that one too. So those are 3 words that you will probably never hear me say ever again. And just think on that. And maybe you want to strike them from your vocabulary as well. All right. That's it for today. I know it's riveting stuff. If you would be so kind, I have been told I need to get more subscribers and more followers. And for the people that are not as social media savvy, I will explain this in further detail. If you go to Spotify or Apple or YouTube for your podcast, Spotify and YouTube will give you video and audio. Apple will just give you audio. So if you are like, I am sick of seeing her face, just go to Apple. If you're going to do that, you want to search on Spotify and Apple, fucking ridiculous. Yeah, that's it. If you want to search on YouTube, go to the FR Pod. And this is also important because if you are uncomfortable with saying the word fuck or fucking, then you can just abbreviate things with #FR or FR, because that seems to be a little bit more comfortable for some people. It's not for me, but I still will say like #FR, or I'll text someone and be like, this just happened to me, fucking #FR. So if you're more comfortable with that, just go with the FR Pod. And then you can, go from there. That's for YouTube and all the socials. When the socials, just to be clear, are Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and I guess you would consider YouTube a social as well. So if you go there, you subscribe or follow. I think those are the same things when you're subscribing to like listen or watch. And then you follow on the socials. And if that was like way TMI, like you're like, God, you lost me at like, do this. Just go to thefrpod.com and it'll say everything there. Okay? All right. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a great week. And I'm going to be trying out new like catchphrases for like closing the podcast, but I keep going back to this one, which is, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
3, 2, 1.